Once upon a time in a peaceful countryside there was a beautiful pond surrounded by green grass, colorful flowers, and tall trees. Near the pond a mother duck sat carefully on her nest waiting for her eggs to hatch. Day after day she watched over them with love and patience. One bright morning the eggs finally began to crack. Little yellow ducklings popped out one after another. Mother duck smiled with happiness, but one egg was still waiting to hatch. It was much larger than all the others. After some time the big egg finally cracked open. Out came a strange gray duckling. He was bigger than his brothers and sisters, and his feathers looked messy and dull. The other ducklings stared at him in surprise. They whispered among themselves and laughed. Mother duck looked at him gently and said, "You may look different, but you are my child, and I love you just the same." The duckling felt happy to hear those words. The next day Mother duck took all her ducklings to the pond. The little ducklings splashed and played in the water. The gray duckling swam beautifully too, but the other animals around the pond laughed at him. The ducks, geese, and chickens pointed at him and said, "What an ugly duckling." The gray duckling felt hurt. Every day he tried to make friends, but nobody wanted to play with him. Even his brothers and sisters teased him. The poor duckling often sat alone beside the pond looking at his reflection in the water. He wondered why everyone disliked him. One evening after another day of sadness he made a decision. He would leave the farm and search for a place where he belonged. Early the next morning he quietly walked away. He crossed green fields and wandered through forests. After a long journey he arrived at a marsh where wild ducks lived. "Can I stay here for a while?" he asked politely. The wild ducks looked at him. They thought he looked strange but allowed him to stay. For a short time he felt safe. But one day hunters came to the marsh. Loud noises filled the air. Animals ran everywhere in fear. The duckling quickly escaped into the forest. He ran and ran until he found a small old cottage. Inside lived an old woman, a cat, and a hen. The old woman welcomed him into her home. The duckling thought his troubles were finally over, but the cat and the hen often mocked him. They laughed at the things he could not do. The duckling became unhappy once again. He realized that this was not the place for him. So he left the cottage and continued his journey. Summer slowly turned into autumn. Golden leaves covered the ground. The air became cool and fresh. One evening the duckling looked up at the sky. There he saw the most beautiful birds he had ever seen. They were graceful white swans flying together across the sunset sky. Their wings sparkled in the golden light. The duckling could not take his eyes off them. A strange feeling filled his heart. He wished he could be as beautiful as they were. Soon winter arrived. Snow covered the fields and forests. The pond froze into ice. The duckling struggled to survive in the freezing cold. Some days he could barely find food. The icy wind blew through his feathers. He felt lonely and weak. One day he became trapped in the frozen water. He could not move. Luckily, a kind farmer found him and rescued him. The farmer carried him home and kept him warm. The duckling slowly regained his strength. At last winter ended. Spring arrived with sunshine and blooming flowers. Birds sang happily in the trees. The duckling had grown much bigger during the winter. One beautiful morning he flew toward a sparkling lake. There he saw 3 magnificent white swans swimming gracefully on the water. The duckling remembered the beautiful birds he had seen in the sky months before. He felt nervous. Surely they would laugh at him too. But he wanted to be near them. Slowly he swam toward the swans. As he lowered his head, he caught sight of his reflection in the clear water. He stopped in amazement. Looking back at him was not an ugly gray duckling. Instead, he saw a beautiful white swan. His feathers were bright and elegant. His neck was long and graceful. The ugly duckling had grown into a magnificent swan. At that moment, the other swans welcomed him warmly. The young swan felt happier than ever before. For the first time in his life, he knew where he belonged. Soon children came to the lake. They pointed at him and said, "Look at that beautiful swan. He is the most beautiful of them all." The swan felt proud but remained humble. He remembered all the difficult days he had faced. He remembered being lonely and different. Now he understood something important. Being different was never a weakness. It was what made him special. From that day on, the beautiful swan lived happily on the lake with his new friends. And whenever he saw someone feeling lonely or left out, he showed them kindness because he knew exactly how it felt. And so the swan learned that true beauty comes from within and that everyone blooms in their own time. The end. Moral of the story: never judge someone by their appearance, because true beauty comes from within and everyone has their own special time to shine.